Hello, ladies and gentlemen, veterans, dedicated VA employees, everybody watching. As always, I appreciate you coming back. Let's talk more about veteran disability, some VA disability here. My name is Attorney Matthew Lang, VA accredited attorney. Years of experience working within the VA, veteran myself. Here to provide you videos to educate and hopefully make this process smoother between veteran and VA. So in last week's video, I I gave a foundation. I wanted to build a foundation of reduction in benefits and different things that could create that. Now, as I mentioned, there's a few things in there, maybe not all the topics even. We could have went in depth in separate videos, or maybe even more than one video. So I didn't want to do that in that video. I wanted to kind of lay out these different scenarios. Came to my attention, and I'm glad I did. Came to my attention that I missed an important part in that foundation piece. And that important part is TDIU, temporary disability for individual unemployability. This is a benefit we're going to discuss here. Uh, and get an idea of what it is for those who don't know. And then I want to talk about the possibility of that reduction occurring. So ultimately, in the title of it, we know it's temporary for the most part. Usually, there are exceptions again, law, right? Um, but it is temporary, so it is possible to have this temporary 100% payout become something lower based upon the evidence. So I want to look at that as well. Let's start with I'm going to water down a definition for what TDIU is. So TDIU allows you veterans who cannot maintain substantially gainful employment due to your service-connected disabilities to be compensated again at the 100% disability rate, even if your combined disability rating is less than 100%. So it's a benefit that's out there to give you 100% when your conditions are so severe that you can't maintain substantially gainful employment, but unfortunately, the laws and the schedulers for all those conditions just don't reach that 100%. Now, if you want a definition of unemployability, you can find one in 38 CFR 4.18. It does have a nice paragraph there. Little legalese, of course, but it is there. So I would refer to that if you want an idea of what the definition is, but I'm going to water it down to something much simpler today there. Now, let's talk about how do we establish TDIU for those who don't know and maybe those who don't have it. Uh, and maybe you even should be receiving it. Uh, for us to establish the TDIU disability rating, uh, we've got to show veterans that you are unemployable, in fact, is another term for it, but unable to secure or follow that substantially gainful employment by reasons of your service connected conditions. And we're going to do that by looking at a massive amount of evidence. We can do that in multiple different ways with different pieces of evidence. Uh, but it's not really the only piece there. And we're going to talk more about some of that evidence stuff there, but uh, it's not the only piece. The idea is there's a scheduler piece as well to establishing the TDIU. So if the evidence does show veterans that you are unable to secure and follow substantially gainful employment, the VA is going to likely look to see if you meet this scheduler requirement. Now, the scheduler requirement is going to be found in um, 38 CFR 4.16. And I need to go back and make sure I said 4.18 for your definition. And I'm sorry, let me just make the correction. I'm not sure if I said 4.16 or 4.18 instead of fixing the whole video. 4.18 for your definition. We'll leave the blooper in here today. 4.16 gives you your scheduler requirement. So, in short, what is that scheduler requirement? Veterans, if you have a one service connected condition uh, that is rated at least at 60% just by itself, uh, that meets the scheduler requirement underneath 4.16. Now, if you don't, you can still meet the scheduler requirement by having two or more service connected disabilities. But one of those are going to have to be at least 40%, and the combination of those disabilities will have to equal 70%. Now, this is one area where I'm going to say VA may error a little bit more because we get lost and focused in on sometimes what looks black and white with the law. And it would appear that you must have not only evidence of not being able to follow substantially gainful employment, you must also have this scheduler requirement met. And I think a lot of times, at least when I was working in the VA, that was the issue. We just looked at the scheduler and went, oh, they don't meet scheduler, so deny it. That could be incorrect uh, because with law comes exceptions. 4.16a gives you that whole definition of the scheduler requirement. As 4.16b actually says, what if veterans don't meet that requirement, but the evidence does show they can't follow substantially gainful employment due to their service connected conditions? We call this an extra scheduler. So it is possible, veterans, that you may not meet that scheduler piece, but you may meet this extra scheduler piece where the VA will seek additional approval from above and determine if the evidence supports still the grant of TDIU without meeting scheduler. So it's an exception to the law. What gets really fascinating on a side note there is even if the authorities to be, after reviewing evidence and everything that the VA lays out in an outline or whatnot for them, says no, the benefit is still denied, we're not going to grant extra scheduler veterans, we can still go to places like the Board of Veterans Appeals, and maybe even higher to overturn that decision. It's not a completely binding decision. So keep that in mind. It may not be the end of your fight. Um, One thing I want to note to veterans is when we're talking about TDIU, when we talk about substantially gainful employment, the idea is that just being unemployed by itself is not necessarily unemployability. Uh, Choosing not to work and not being able to work because your service connected conditions is going to be seen as something completely different. And I don't want to get too heavy on that. I just want to kind of throw that out there that could mix things up in the process. All right. So when we think about the inability to secure or follow substantially gainful occupation, we want to look at evidence both in, again, economic and non-economic perspectives. This helps us to go, okay, there's not just one piece of the puzzle that we're going to focus in on, and we're not going to put these blinders on and look at it only. We need to really address, well, what all is going on. And that's one thing, veterans, that here's my self plug. Representatives like myself, other accredited agents, VSOs can actually help you with dig through that evidence, build those arguments, put those together, take that stress off you, save that time fighting with the VA. Sorry, VA. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. We're on this side, so we will fight with you for a little bit. Not that we can't be friends, but that's what we're here for. So if you do have veterans a TDIU claim that you want to have looked at, veteranlane.com. Set up a time with me. Let's schedule a time. We'll meet. We'll talk. If you're outside of the Arizona area, I'll give you a phone call and we'll go through everything. We'll get you all set up. We'll take things further and uphill as needed if we can. And if you're in the Arizona area and you want to visit Surprise, Arizona, or if you are in Surprise, Arizona, Phoenix area, new office location, we can always meet in person now to give that option as we slowly build these locations up. But at 13991 West Grand Ave here in suite number 100 in Surprise, Arizona. Okay, so let's look at the economic and non-economic portions here. So what is the economic component of IU or TDIU? This is going to be more your wages that you earn, veterans. So the other idea is that you may actually be working. You may be working, and you may still be unable to be substantially gainfully employed or maintain substantially gainful employment, right? So they're going to look at the economic part, which is essentially your wages for the most part. Um, ultimately, we're going to look at the poverty threshold that's set by our government. As we come around the bend here to another year, we're going to find that that number is going to likely change and be bumped up a bit. But they're going to look at, are you making earnings above that threshold there? Now, this is not a number set by the VA. This is a number set outside the VA. And as the number's going to change, I don't want to get into it completely, but that's the idea: is where are your earnings at? Where are they? Uh, are you making above the poverty threshold, but still only doing it in 2 or 3 days a week, not working full time, maybe working part time and still able to do it? Oddly enough, it can happen. Um, Things like that are going to be looked at. Are you working full time and still making above that poverty threshold? Um, we also are going to look at the non-economic parts, right? So there's two parts to all this. The non-economic component of TDIU is determined based on factors contributing veterans to your abilities and inabilities. So this is where we get really heavy with the evidence here, because we're going to get so heavy in the evidence. We're talking about looking at type of work you've done. We're looking at length of employment, for example. We're looking at skills required to do the job. We're looking at time since you were last employed. We're looking at your level of education that you've achieved. We're looking at the nature of education in the area of the job. We're looking at applicability of past education. We're looking at education. We're looking at skills. We're looking at abilities. We're looking at your employment history. We're looking at what kind of training you've had in the past. We're also going to look at a series of other things. We're going to look at the idea of, do you have physical disabilities that keep you from being able to, say, sit or stand a lot? Can you do the sedentary work? Maybe you can't do a lot of lifting. Maybe you can only do light lifting. Maybe you can do medium lifting, heavy lifting. Is any of this substantially unable to maintain substantially gainful employment? And it all could be. Um, Maybe we even got things where your disabilities keep you from not just lifting, sitting, standing, but walking, climbing, grasping things, being able to see, being able to hear. Uh, Maybe there's some memory issues that will prevent you from being substantially gainful employment. Maybe you have cognitive issues that keep you from being able to concentrate for long enough periods of time. Veterans, there's so many things here, and this is actually just a short list from the VA's own manual that they have to be looking at and considering. So VA, don't forget your manual has a list. It's not all inclusive by any means underneath the law, but definitely a lot there to look at. And I think, unfortunately, what I have seen and that can happen is that VA you'll get a medical examiner who says veteran can do sedentary employment, and you'll go ahead and say that they're employable and deny their claim. But you've got to look at it so much. Just because the veteran can sit there and they maintain substantially gainful employment and they sit there long enough, can they truly do that job to a point that they can maintain substantially gainful employment? So keep that in mind, VA, please. Help the veterans out a little bit more. I know you're underneath strict standards to move claims really fast, but you do have legal obligations to look at all this evidence, to weigh all this evidence, to discuss all this evidence, uh, and to do everything you can in the scope of the law to properly decide the claim. Um, Now, this has gone on a little bit longer than I kind of anticipated in that first part here, but I'm veterans and I'm everybody watching. I'm really hoping that gives you an idea of what TDIU really is. There's a lot of, again, a lot that I didn't cover underneath the law here. There's a lot of other pieces, but it's essentially looking at you in one big picture. Now, keep in mind, um, that can be difficult on paper too. So I don't want to beat the VA up completely. Veterans, we do sometimes need to really help paint that picture in the paper because they don't have you in front of them to really ask a lot of those questions that they may need to ask. Now let's talk about the reduction piece, though, right? This is what we want to blend in with last week here. Now that we know what TDIU is, the idea is that it can be reduced, and it's a huge part because, like I said, in the title of it, temporary is the first word. So how could it be reduced? Well, veterans, if for some reason VA gets a report that says you are working, typically an SSA report, Social Security will send some information through, and they say you're making earnings above the poverty level. That could trigger the VA to look closer at your claim. Now, again, that's only one part. That's only the economic part. So VA will likely send you letters to prove that you are unable to maintain substantially gainful employment. They're going to send you forms to fill out and try to get more information from you. Um, so that's one way. If you truly can maintain substantially gainful employment now with your service connected conditions, um, once it's shown even economically and non economically now, your benefit's going to come down. You're going to get reduced down from your temporary 100% to whatever your combined scheduler would have been without the TDIU. So if your combined scheduler was at 70% before TDIU paid you the temporary 100%, then you're going to go from 100 back down to 70, for example. Now, the biggest piece that could really play the role, not just report of economic earnings here, but evidence comes of a file. Maybe you veterans, you decide you want to file an increase claim on one of these conditions, and it happens again, as I mentioned before, just legal and medical definitions don't always jive. And underneath the legal definition, you have improvement. And now, does that improvement, is it sustained improvement? So now we start playing with other laws and we start opening up a bunch of other rules and evidence reviews. And if it is sustained improvement, is that sustained improvement enough that now makes you substantially gainfully employable? And that is a really big analysis that we're going to have to look at in a lot of evidence review and should likely obtain even more information in something as simple as one showing like that in one condition. So ultimately, a reduction could occur, veterans, that you do. You're now substantially gainfully employed, whether that means those conditions have improved enough to make you substantially gainfully employed, or whether you make enough money because those conditions you are no longer holding you to a spot where you can't maintain that substantially gainful employment status. So that's really the key, though. Are you substantially gainfully employed? And that's what we have to look at. If for some reason the evidence shows improvement in those conditions, wages, whatnot, all come together, and you are now deemed substantially gainfully employed, you are going to get reduced. Now, keep in mind, it's not the only benefit you may lose here that gets in the reduction. There are other legal areas where you may get a special monthly compensation attached with your TDIU benefit. And now once that TDIU is reduced, you will likely lose the special monthly compensation or the SMC portion that may have came with it. And not everybody gets it. It's all facts of the case here. So keep in mind that's not necessarily everybody gets it here. Uh, so you would lose that benefit as well. Um, Something else to think about though is typically the VA isn't going to go back and review your file veterans on the TDIU portion alone if you go back to work and you're making less than the poverty level. So typically you're still would be deemed not substantially gainfully employed. Maybe employed, but just not substantially gainfully. Uh, we also had that in the last video, a brief mention of the 20-year rule. So if you veterans have had TDIU for more than 20 years, well, it's not going to be really routinely checked anymore. But I would say if you've got it for 20 years and you haven't checked to see if you should be 100% permanent total ENT, um, you probably should have at least talked to a representative, had them review your case, and see if that's where you really should have been, because the VA now won't review TDIU if, well, you're receiving PNT. Plus, PNT will also provide you with additional benefits as it's permanent, that TDIU may not give you, either through your state or through the VA itself, for multiple different things, including potentially for your spouse as well. Whole different topic there to talk about. But ultimately, yes, TDIU is huge. It can be reduced. It's not designed to be temporary. Can it become permanent? Technically, I can make an argument for that. Yes, but veterans, I would definitely consider looking into 100% PNT. If you are receiving TDIU, especially for numerous years, again, veteranlang.com. Another plug for you. Check me out. We can talk for sure. Look at the evidence. Maybe maybe we can do a full representation, where I can get you where you need to be, if that's the case, with the 100%. If it's not, and maybe it's not something you fully want, or you just want to kind of get a feel for where you are, I have no problem doing a limited scope type representation to for a small fee. It's definitely affordable. That can have your documents all reviewed that you provide, and then kind of see what we're looking at and give you suggestions on where we might go. So we do have different options for you. Maybe even we can do other limited scope representation if you're not looking for that full representation, because sometimes um, one way is more affordable than the other, and that's really what I want to give to you veterans is affordable services back here underneath the law as it allows me to. All right. Um, so that's TDIU. Yes, it can be reduced. The main focus is going to be any evidence that shows that veterans you no longer are substantially gainfully employed. That's going to be the biggest cause of that. Now, keep in mind, everybody's case again is different. I don't know what's in your evidence. There could be so many different things. So I can't really talk to the likelihood of TDIU being reduced. Is it reduced all the time? No. Um, is there a certain percentages it gets reduced? No. It's all based upon facts of the case. So keep that in mind. Um, Again, I appreciate everybody for coming to the channel, and having a discussion about VA disability, veterans disability. I do encourage the comments, especially the subscribing, the liking, the sharing, if you so desire there, to help open up another platform where we can make the process easier in the future. And as I've told people before, legitimately make me unemployed. That's my ultimate goal. I'm here to help as much as I can, and I'm not from the government. So let's see what we can do for veterans and VA. Let's see what veterans can do to help you too in your process. I thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful day.